Welcome to the Sky Talk Doc podcast, where we navigate life, relationships, and everything in between with thought-provoking curiosity and a touch of grace. Buckle up, Buttercup. This is a flight you won't forget. Before we get into today's podcast and our amazing guest, I just want to tell you, you're not broken. You're just wired for survival in a world that doesn't always feel safe. Maybe you keep people at a distance because deep down you don't feel very lovable, or maybe you overachieve because a part of you believes you're not enough. But that's not weakness. It's your brain doing its best to protect an old wound. But here's the thing. What protected you then might be sabotaging you now. If you're tired of the same arguments, same spirals, or feeling unseen in your relationships, take the 7 Primal Wounds quiz at 7primalwounds.com to find out what your wound is and stop the same crappy patterns, chaos, and relationship conflict today. Good morning, Maryn, and welcome to the Sky Talk Doc podcast. Kind of ironic that it's the Sky Talk Doc podcast. And we're going to be talking about vocal transformation, something I am insanely fascinated by. I've actually been diving into a little bit of research behind the importance of slowing down when we communicate, allowing our voice to settle into that lower tonality so that we can be more authoritative and come across with more confidence. I've also been doing a little bit of research on the psychology of voice tone and how it can imply when somebody is lying and things like that. And so, anyways, I'm just super excited to have you share a little bit about what you're doing, how you got where you are, and also the history and science behind kind of the work that you're doing, because I find it fascinating.
Yeah, I think that the human race doesn't realize that we have a tool that's for our healing and for manifesting and for the way that we create our life. Like the voice is the center point of everything we do. And I think it's something that we have serious insecurity about. And we've been trained by the outside world to hold back. And that's where it gets in our way.
So, share with me a little bit about what you do specifically in terms of vocal transformation. And if you could share a little bit about the history of even singing and song and how it so profoundly has changed really cultures for centuries. I'd love to know more about that. I'd love to know more about how you got into the work you're doing and what it is exactly that you're teaching people.
I'm showing people how they can heal any aspect of their life with the power of their own voice. So when I say vocal transformation, I have watched people completely heal diseases, old traumas, relationships, scarcity. Like I've literally watched people transform their life by understanding this power. And yes, you said it. This is what the ancestors knew all the way from the very first of us, of humans on this earth, and what we knew when we were babies and first born and we let out our first cry. It's the deepest part of our natural being is this sound current that we make. And I say current because it is electromagnetic currency that's moving through the body into the whole quantum field, which is all made of currents. And when we look at it, really take it to that micro, macro picture, we understand that the voice is not really us as like an ego separate. The voice is a frequency tool that we have for how we'll create our lived reality. So ancient civilizations go all the way back to ancient Egypt, go to all the Vedic wisdoms that we have here in the East now, go to ancient Africa, go anywhere in the world, go to the Ukraine and go to the Nordic regions, go to any of these areas and you will find voice practices. And what we're learning now scientifically about it is that it has to do with your neural networks and it has to do with the level, what hormones get released when we use our voice in this way. So we talked about like singing. Singing has now become very performative. In the West, where we attach everything to ego identity, singing is this idea of, do I have a good enough voice and can I entertain somebody? And if we could be entertained by them, we'll call them a great singer. And if we can't, then we would say, or even for ourselves, we would say, we're not a great singer. But if you have a voice, you have a voice. And it's all about muscle and resonators and how sound moves through your body. So just because now you open your mouth and it doesn't sound as pretty as you want it to, doesn't mean it's not productive and not a very important part of your being. But because we take everything to the ego, we judge it and we minimize it. But why does that happen? It happens because our modern society didn't teach us about why we actually had this voice, or on the contrary, actually, When we used our voice organically and naturally at a very young age, we were told it wasn't okay to do so in certain ways, so we got minimized by the outside world. Once we actually take that back and we allow our voice to be fully expressed, we step back into our complete power. There is nothing out there that determines your health, your wealth, your relationships, your dreams, your creative potentials. It all happens from inside. And that's what we knew as a baby when we first cried. But also, if we go back to these ancient technologies, right, these ancient wisdoms, tribes would come together and sing the songs, the song lines, the ancestry that's handed down generationally. But the science around this is that what they were actually doing is increasing oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine. What they were actually doing is reducing cortisol and adrenaline and all of these fight or flight when you're in that kind of survival mode that can take over your nervous system, right?
Jack. Yes, I have a whole chapter on that in my new book that's coming out, which everyone's heard a lot about on this channel. But there was so much coming up for me as you were talking, from the throat, tension of the throat, thyroid chakra, to negative energy and the impact that our words have on our water, Masaru Emoto's work that I've seen. And then something I think really critical that you touched on is the energy and vibration. I've done a lot of research on the different, 432, various different frequencies, how the 11th harmonics have been known to shatter cancer. And these are all frequencies that we can produce with our mouth. So I'd love for you to pick any of those and dive in.
Yeah, any and all of them. I don't know where to actually jump into that, except that so the seven harmonics of the human body, the seven chakras and the cluster of nerve ganglion that are sitting at each of these points in our nervous system. So you said the throat, I'll go here. You said the throat and the thyroid issues, but what we also don't realize is that most of our throat chakra issues, or most of our voice issues there, we feel a sticking at the throat, is actually a tightening of the tongue. And the tongue is storing what we wanted to say that we didn't say, or what we've said that we regret saying and wished we hadn't, or anything that we say that actually is like mean or violent in its nature. We also will receive the energetic of that imprint and will store it in the back of the tongue.
And it is the largest muscles in the body, right? The tongue is
Yes.
one of the biggest muscles. Yeah. Okay.
Designed to move energy from the earth up through the body and out the mouth. So here's where my work comes in that might be a little different. I don't know all the voice teachers out there. So if you're out there and you teach it this way, please contact me, because I want to know what you have experienced in the process of teaching it this way. But these muscles are all the way down at the bottom of the body that are meant to support the voice. And the tongue, from the tip of it, when you activate it muscularly, connects all the way to the root of the body. So when you hit your tongue against your teeth, it will open the root and it will get it to the earth. It'll ground your nervous system. And then from there, sound emanates upwards out the whole body and out of the mouth. So we have a massive muscle that goes from the front of the mouth down to where the vocal cords are. Like it's the whole throat opening that the tongue is actually sitting in. And it's designed to move that sound out into the world that is quote unquote outside of our body, right? So there is no separation between any of this vibration. We know this in a mental way, but to really be able to feel that what we see as a physical body is just more dense energetics compared to what we're not seeing in the air that's between us, which is really full of so much between us that we just can't see with our senses.
Kind of like kinetic sand spread out. It's just little particles, but when you pack it all together, so that's the difference. We have the spread out energy of kinetic sand, and then we have our body, which would be the packed together kinetic sand. Yeah.
Yes. So now, if you send that sound, which is Shakti or Kundalini, you'd call it, or physical life force energy through the body, you are moving that sound wave through the water structures of every cell. If you want to go to Masaru Emoto's work, through all of the particles, everything, energy in motion, right? Emotion is moving particles. So you are now sending sound through the body, through what we see as dense, immovable, but it's very much moving. And we're sending it out through into the auric fields that are moving outside of our bodies and are merging with everything that is. So sound inside, kept inside, is energy that's stored within. and it will affect your energetics in that more dense frame. Sound outside, moving from inside to without, is beginning to alter the physical structure of the body that you're in and is actually going to be sending its signal out to magnetize towards it what you're sending out.
Well, and I even read an article recently, and it was a scholarly article that said if you scream when you're in pain, you're actually healing the body. There's an actual healing process that happens from the energetic vocal release.
Yes, but there are two things that could happen too. You could also hurt yourself, right? So the back to what we were saying with the throat, we'll take it back to there. That tightness at the throat, if you're not supporting your sound correctly, is actually constricting the first connection of the vagus nerve down into the body.
Interesting. Interesting. I'm a vagus nerve geek, so I love that. Fascinating.
So the difference between relaxed open throat, which is the key to a throat chakra, is that it has to be surrendered and open. And the throat, which we see as this small little opening here, is actually not. It's actually this massive open area of manifestation. But the body displays itself as this area because this tightness is our area of choice and follow through. So basically, from every potential, every possible amalgamation of thought process and creativity and everything universally that any of us could be, we are going to minimize, I don't want to say collapse that. I don't even like that word, but we're going to choose. We're going to choose what we want to put out into the world from everything that we can channel. And that's why the throat, which represents as our area of manifestation, is also our area of choice and follow through. And it comes in our body because it's sitting between our heart and our lower body and our head and that higher self. And we have to decide what we put out.
As you're talking, I'm thinking, there's been a couple of people in my life lately that have been creating a lot of havoc. I mean, a lot of horrific like things. And it's hard sometimes not to want to vocalize that frustration or that anger. Or what are your thoughts on maybe getting rid of some of that toxicity that is presented to you, put in your sphere? How best to navigate that? I mean, do we just beat it with positivity? Because sometimes I just want to be angry. I'm curious.
Yeah, no. So that anger is super productive, right? We know that. We've been taught as young children that anger is not okay, mostly by our parents who were yelling at us, telling us not to yell at them. But like this whole thing of just, this is what I was saying before about where it can hurt you or where it can help you, that release you were talking about. When the throat tightens when you scream, it's because it's coming from the head, right?
Uh,
The body, the head is just in that alignment with the throat as far as the size goes. But
well,
then when you look at the actual underbody, how wide the body is, right, can also come up through the throat. So when someone's behaving in a certain way, first of all, presence is everything, right? If what makes you angry, what makes you frustrated, what is it doing? Is it triggering a past thing that is replaying an emotional pattern inside your body? Are you reacting to a million things that never got released before as well? Like, what is actually going on in this moment? So presence is really important. But anger around something that you might find to be immoral, unjust, or just plain old wrong, like, or even to say not allowed in my world, which we are actually allowed to do. We're allowed to say, no, thank you, not in my world, right? So with that, then you express that up. That's speaking up.
mm.
Up sounds very different.
Oh my gosh, I'm just drawing the connection to this and how literal. I mean, you hear speak up all the time, but I never put together that meant from the core out rather than the ego head down. That's fascinating. Stop it. Oh my
So talking down, you could hurt someone, right? Talking down can be angry, diminishing,
God.
um, it just rejects and it pushes away. Talking down is this, I don't want to hear it anymore. I've had enough. It's your thing. It's not my thing. And typically those words can smart. And that again is going to create throat tension because they're big, angry feelings, but then they're coming down through that tongue that would rather actually be saying something else. It really would. Humanity is a heart-centered species.
I love it.
When we act out of our ego, our minds, our program, our conditioning, we can very often do things that on the other side, like go back, look at it and go, I wish I would have done that differently. Right. But if we're in our heart, we're in our presence. And when we come from speaking up, it's never going to sound like you do this and you do that and I hate you. It's going to sound like when you do this, I feel like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's going to be factually based, emotionally sound. And then you're going to give them the opportunity to respond from their heart because you're coming from your heart. And if they don't, perfect time to exit.
This is so beautiful because you're really referencing the P and the R in the primal reset that I offer in my seven primal wounds book, which is, really recognizing the activation, recognizing the trigger, taking a pause, and then reframing it, asking myself, what is the story that I'm telling myself about this moment? And can I peel back the layer of the onion, get a little bit more vulnerable with the truth? And now I could even incorporate this amazing piece that Maryn is offering the world, which is then speak up. Otherwise, you're speaking down.
And I take from there because here's where the voice work comes in huge. In that moment of presence, you might not be able to find what's really going on in there.
Absolutely. Yes.
Triggers might be everywhere, and you might have 100 lanes that you're like, no, it's that, no, it's that, no, it's that, right? From upstairs.
Yep.
So here's where the voice work comes into play. It all has to do with the diaphragmatic breath. It has to do with how you breathe and support sound. And once you start practicing your voice every day, so my work is a daily chanting practice that you do for 9 months to reset the entire system. Once you get that ingrained inside the body, there will be no more reactivity. There will only be proactivity. And it's because you're trained, you'll now be re-entrained. And I say this because it was the first breath you took as a baby. So we're not learning anything. We're untraining.
Yes, this is what I say. It's unself-helping. Yes, we're not broke yet. We're actually designed exactly perfectly. It's just we've learned some maladaptive traits.
Thank you, patriarchy, which we could do that in another conversation. But the motherly way, the matriarchal earth, right? The earth is the Shakti, the earth is the mother, is the feminine that has been repressed and manipulated for centuries and centuries now, right? That comes into being in our body. The major issues I see health wise in the world is that we're trying to get everything from the head. We
Mhm.
think our brain is our highest level of intelligence. Philosophy. Thank you, Socrates.
Yes, the body is the first clue, 100%.
Thank you. But thank you that, like, this is what I would say was the turn to the more masculine approach at life is
Right.
that we're not body first, we're head first, right? That's where all of our problems are being. And I'm not saying that we have to have amazingly strong heads. There's nothing wrong with our minds in tandem, in perfect tandem with a heart and a gut that are all working together, right? So when we take the voice breath, what is the voice breath? It's not just the singing voice breath or the chanting voice breath. It's the way that we're designed to support sound, period. When we speak, we are designed to take a diaphragm breath down, which is the way we first breathed when we first were born and the way that we're designed to breathe all day, every day. But most of us are breathing into our upper lungs and feeding our mind stream. Right? Once we get that breath down, it's going to expand the belly, which is a big no-no in our modern world because we want to have like a flat stomach, right? But if we can get expansive at the bottom of the body, you're going to feel all the muscles that open. Those are your voice muscles. When they open and we learn how to use them, which is not contractively, it's actually expressively, like we did when we cried like a baby. And we actually retrain that into the body, which is what we have forgotten, right? Moving all of our energy up towards the head. Now we're bringing an energy down to the earth. Once we re engage that, you will know how you really feel.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. So I've done quite a bit of breath work and it's always amazing to me, especially when you do the what is it? That one where you're like breathing it all out.
Is that breath of fire you're talking about?
Yeah, yes, exactly. And it's so powerful. Sometimes when you start these practices, you can feel a little goofy or even a little lightheaded until you kind of figure out what you're doing. But I've had some pretty wild somatic releases from doing breath work. It's powerful.
It might be I say that the voice is the greatest medicine we have, of course, because that's my work, but the breath is spirit itself. Inspiration, respiration, respirating, inspiring. It's all like it's moving spirit through the body. So everything we breathe in is the conversation of everything that's happening in our environment,
Mhm.
right? Connecting us to everything that is. So when we actually are doing any kind of breath work, holotropic or anything like that, we're in spiriting. And what happens when you bring all of that spirit in? Ask Wim Hof what happens. You can bump out diseases, you can bump out bacteriums, you can change, you totally get your body back into homeostasis. But before you get there, you feel like the whole thing blows up into smithereens, right? You get super lightheaded, you get
Yeah.
super tense, everything. And then, okay, and now your body can readjust because all that spirit, which is so intelligent, has just moved through the body, right? Now, take that spirit and design how you choose to wield it in the world, which is what your voice does. And now you're talking about life mastery.
Mm,
Because you hear it's not the words I'm choosing. And most of us go right there. Like your thoughts are very important. Yes, your thought creates emotion, creates action. We got that. And your thoughts create the initial fire. And then you could say it. So you could say, I don't know, let me use an example. You could say, I love you. I love you so much from this small little way, right? And it's sweet. It's sweet. I love you, right? Or you could breathe in and say, I love you.
right.
I really love you from
Right.
in the body, right? And now who you're communicating that with is getting a whole different energetic imprint from you. In the second one, you might have heard grounding and you might have felt more resonance. You might hear it in my voice when I speak in general. There's resonance. There's that thicker sound of voice that travels as I speak, right? It's not short and choppy and blocky and this, and it's not tight in the throat, and it's not coming from the nose. It's in my whole body and it's moving energy. We get to do that, humans. We get to move energy out into the world that, when paired with a thought, and given a directive and the right amount of energy, begins to create reality. And these teachings of the Vedas, this is ancient wisdom. The Rig Veda, 10,000-year-old yoga text, speaks of the human voice as unmanifest form. And it's not the only text that does that. I just call it out because it's so clear. Sanskrit, which is in the West, yoga has just become more and more popular, right? Sanskrit is a vibrational language. It's not, the words don't mean anything. Of course, there's a dictionary that collegiately has been written. And yes, there's meanings to all those Sanskrit words. So, okay, that's there. But the language in its origin is not conversational. It's only for this purpose. It's to wield sound frequency into reality.
I
And
love
we do
it.
this with our words as well.
And I'm even thinking about, we could call it Christianity, but whatever. In the Hebraic text, the original findings in the Qumran caves, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Ruach Hakodesh, and all of that, and the power that's behind that. I love that so much. One thing that came up for me as you were talking is I had read quite a bit in my early psychology days about high pitch correlation to prior sexual trauma. So, like, as if someone gets stuck at that age and then it can be witnessed as an adult in kind of a higher pitch, kind of tone. Have you found anything with that?
Yeah, I'm doing this for almost 20 years. I work with sexual trauma so much. What happens at second chakra, which is where sexual organs are and where that energy gets confused. So, second chakra is the other side of the throat chakra. In our chakra system,
Solar plexus?
yeah. So the root chakra, which has to do with survival, our fight or flight lives there, and our physical means is connected to our heart chakra. The second chakra is connected to our throat chakra. The third chakra is connected to our sixth, which is our thought processes and how we move. So sense of self, ego, identity, and all the thoughts we think, right? So we look at our chakra system as three pairings. Of course, they're all talking to each other. But as we develop, they're having the opposing conversation, or the opposite side of the conversation that starts in these lower developments is going to finish at the top. So your second chakra is creativity and expression. I'm sorry, creativity and sexuality and sensuality and relationships and all of those amazing, and all of that's juicy, yummy stuff. And the fifth chakra is expression. And at that time of our life, we never held back. We were, that time being 6 months to 3 years old when it first develops. So this is the time of our life where we have temper tantrums, where anything that happens, we can just kind of express out, right? But if we're stopped in expressing that, it will affect our throat chakra and how we so that tightness that you're talking about, that little voice comes up here, right? So if you have early childhood sexual abuse, the body, you're just learning about the body from 0 to 8 years old, we'll say. If you have any early childhood sexual abuse, the energy that should feel safe inside the flesh does not, and it shoots very prematurely up to coping mechanisms above the throat. So many of the really intelligent humans that are running our show in the world are this story. You
Mhm.
hyper intelligent up top. Your coping mechanisms click in early. Your thought processes start very young, and you can now begin to learn through your brain, reading, and learning from your headspace because your brain got an early surge of Kundalini energy. Where really we're meant to be establishing ourselves through our body for those first 7 years, emotions coming on naturally and not being forced on us. And then 7 to 14 is when our emotional imprint and our higher levels of intellect are going to start to be trained, right? So when we have early childhood sexual abuse, we lose some vital energy down below and it moves up to the top. It shows up in a lot of different ways. It shows up like needing that all the time too. So our second chakra can become overly activated as far as like it feels like there's a void or it feels like there was something that was opened even that needs to be constantly fed. And so it shows up in so many different permutations, we'll say, of how that energy works. But yeah, very often you will hear that the voice up here is controlling everything.
Mhm.
So it's deciding what's going to happen down here, either protecting or abusing and overexerting. But either way, it's all from up in here. There's very little feeling
Oh,
that's
wow.
allowed to drop in.
I know quite a few people that it's almost grating to me, the pitch of their voice.
Mhm.
And now I know why, it's
Yeah.
probably got to do with that. Does it apply also to any trauma? Could it not be sexual related that we
Yes. So anytime there's solar plexus is also a huge one, right? That's ego identity. And that's 3 to 7 years old. So that's when we first go to school and when we first try to like figure out who we are in a social structure. And we're way too young to even know how to handle that situation. So we just are a product of whatever we get thrown into. But if your solar plexus is diminished, then your personal power, your drive, your fire, your willpower, and your confidence
Yes.
is it. And so if you just feel into that spot, you could just suck that part in and you're going to feel immediately your throat collapses.
That's so crazy. I cannot believe this. And I've been doing some research because I'm preparing my TED Talk. And I've been
Right.
doing some research on the speaking and the delivery because this is like a huge part of the TED interview process. And I'm learning so much about the importance of really dropping into that more confident tone that is, like you said, it's speaking up. It's coming from the gut, really, I guess. You would probably explain it a lot more eloquently than the gut. I know that's kind of the catch all for
But
all the
there,
microbiome that drives our intuition and sense of discovery. What is one thing that you might give to people that perhaps are listening in the car and they're feeling a ton of road rage, or they're stressed about their work day, or they just left this crazy line dropping kids off at school? What is one sound or performance, or I know that's probably not the right word, but thing that people can do to kind of just like a baby little reset to the day? Or maybe just something they do before they start their day.
okay, well, if you're talking about frustration and you're talking about needing to like blow off steam, because there's different things you could do, one to empower and one to do. But if you were saying like, I just had a frustrating moment, I need to clear the space and then be able to move about, I would say it starts with a silent scream. And then from there, you can let sound out by either really screaming if you're alone in the car, or you could use all the same muscles and only let a little bit of sound out, and it will do exactly the same thing that a massive scream would do. Do you want to feel it?
That's fascinating. Yeah, let's do it.
So when we talk about a silent scream, we're not talking about like screaming from your frustrated place because that's again, that's talking down. And what's going to happen is it's going to close your throat. And so many of us get into screaming matches or do blow off steam and scream and then get hoarse the whole next day or feel like they've scratched their throat, which we do not want to do. We need that throat to stay really open. So what you could do is take your hands and put them on your obliques, on your waist. And if you take a deep breath, can you feel your waist go wide and feel the strength at the midband, right? Here's your 101 for you, Doc. This is your TED Talk.
Okay.
All you have to do every time anybody asks you a question, and you'll be in your body speaking. So this is how you cried when you were first born. You breathed your diaphragm down and you felt that waist and the whole body would open. And then from there, you would let out a big scream. And the scream doesn't deflate, it actually expands, right? So if right now you breathe into the waist and you feel it get strong, can you now take those obliques and press them out even wider while holding your breath? Let's try that. Breathe into the waist, feel it go wide. Now press your obliques into your hands, broadening the waist, and hold your breath. Feel what other muscles are also opening as you do that, and note whether or not your throat is open or closed. Okay, now exhale. Okay. So if your throat was tightening as you were doing that, you're going to do it again, but this time you're going to take your finger and you're going to put it on top of your tongue. So you're going to hold your tongue down and then you're going to breathe into the waist. You got to hold it down in the back to like hold it down, right? To make sure the throat has to stay open, right? Throat is open. We breathe into the waist. We broaden the waist and we hold the breath. Feel the difference there. If you could take your tongue out now while you still have your breath held and keep the throat open, you'll feel the difference in what channel of sound can be created. Okay. Now release that. You might already just from that muscle feel like, oh, I feel energy moving around my body differently. And something like the scene just shifted.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So one more time.
Okay.
Same thing. And this time, instead of just holding your breath with those muscles, you're going to make that same movement, but you are going to scream as loud as you can, but not let any sound or any air out of your body. So it's
Okay.
not going to sound any different than what we just did, but inside you're going to be screaming.
Okay.
So let's try that. Breathe down to the waist, finger on tongue, expand the waist with a big old silent scream.
Whoa, that's way different.
The whole energy just went boom. I don't know if you got into the muscle, you feel like the whole energetic just changed.
Yeah, literally. It's literally like it's hard to even describe it unless you do it, to be honest.
So this is why babies cry. We cry because we are hungry. We cry because we need to be turned over and blood is getting stagnant. We cry because we need to be changed and we're sitting in urine or fecal matter. We cry because we need to be held by our mom. We cry because we need to go to a doctor because we have a fever, we're hot, we're cold. We cry for all these physical reasons. But the reason why we cry is because we feel something and we need to move it along. And as we move it along, hopefully we have a parent who says, oh, they're feeling something. Is there something I could do to help whatever they might be feeling? Right? But
Right.
we don't know anything about whether or not our parents are going to come when we scream or not. This is an instinct that just takes energy and moves it along so that there's space for something new to enter. And this is what our voice is designed for. If we do not use our voice, any of you listening, you might not use your voice. If you don't use your voice, you make no space for the story to change. You keep the same old story inside of the vessel, and since your frequency is creating the world around you, you will keep creating the same story over and over and over again and feel so comfortable in the fact that nothing ever changes. But once you begin to speak up and move this energy, like you just felt, you didn't even vocalize anything in that practice. You just expanded the body and moved energy.
Yeah, and I will say one thing that came up. I've done a lot of, diaphragm breathing. I've done a lot of belly breathing. I've done a lot of these different techniques and things. And something that always comes up is that Western narrative of suck it in. I mean, it's almost funny, like pushing it out while recording. It's like, don't do that. You suck it in. Don't even, I mean, it's wild how fast that comes up. And I wonder how often we're just going about our day sucking it in.
And not only women now, men. It's like the number of men that when I actually get to their abdomen and show them how to do this, tears, like the amount of vanity that has been forced on them as well. Like the
Yeah.
amount of working against nature,
Yeah.
when I, because my work is psychological, spiritual, physical, it's all of it. It's like the full holistic approach. When I see what the fertility goddesses of the ancients look like and how they were abundantly large and very beautiful, and what we have identified beauty to be is actually it's abstaining from things versus allowing fertility and movement to occur through. It's like everything is about control in our world,
Yeah.
self control. And that's a throat chakra closing. And I don't think it's a coincidence. I think it's part of our societal program because if we control ourselves, then they, whoever the theys are of your world, control you. But when we actually relinquish that control and surrender to the flow of it all and open up, that's when the full abundance comes. Freedom, liberation, but also you are not a controllable being in this world.
Oh, we talk a lot on here about sovereignty and we talk a lot about the they in this podcast. So these listeners definitely are picking up on what you're putting down, but it's so true. And I think it's definitely programming. And it's hard to break that programming sometimes, but so powerful. I know we have to wrap up. I love what you're doing. What an awesome, incredible morning start. Like I just loved it so much. My brain, I could go on for hours visiting with you about things, but where can listeners best get in touch with you and learn more about what you're doing and this 9-month reset, all these things?
So my website is vocaltransformation.com. My Instagram is vocal_transformation. And I recommend coming into that world because I give tips and things and talks and all that through there more than I do obviously on my website. We are starting a community in 2026 where people can come into the whole fold here. But on my website, on my TikTok is also Vocal Transformation, Instagram YouTube Vocal Transformation. If you go into any of those places, you'll see some beginner's tips and some ways into what it is that we do. We do retreats. I have online courses. I do a full cohort every year. There's many ways to enter this work, but it will definitely change your life.
Love this so much. And I'd like, how can I politely send this to a few people, including myself, but um, did you hear that, listener? She said she's pretty much everywhere, offering some pretty awesome free tips and guidance tools. You can join her community in 2026, vocaltransformation.com. She's also vocal_transformation on Instagram, YouTube. Check it all out. We are so elated to have had you today, Maryn. Thank you so much for coming on.
The views expressed in this podcast aren't necessarily those of the Sky Talk Doc. They're here to challenge your thinking and inspire growth. Until next time, blue skies and tailwinds.